Hey everyone, David Aragona here for another edition of the TimeformUS Road to the Derby series. 3 Kentucky Derby preps taking place this weekend out in California, New York at Aqueduct, and Florida, where they're running the Grade 2 Fountain of Youth on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. And that's the race we're going to take a look at in this preview, the feature race at Gulfstream on Saturday, race 14 at the end of a marathon card. Let's throw up the field of 10 runners signed on for this Fountain of Youth Stakes. And while the other two preps being run on Saturday, the San Felipe and the Gotham, have come up as very competitive affairs, maybe not the case in the Fountain of Youth, as there is a substantial favorite signed on here in the number 4 Forte. He is the number 1 ranked horse on the DRF Derby Watch that Brad Free and I have been keeping track of every week. He was moved up to number 1 this week, and he figures to be the heavy favorite on Saturday in this Fountain of Youth. His main rival, the number 6 Blazing Sevens, who Forte did beat twice last year when they both were 2-year-olds. And then we've got some horses that are coming out of the Holy Bull, including Rocket Can and Shadow Dragon, that being the local prep for this Fountain of Youth. A lightly raced horse like Mage, who's making just the second start of his career. So a lot of things going on in this race, but the number 4 Forte is clearly the one to beat. Before we get into the contenders, let's take a look at the TimeformUS pace projector for this race. And you see that second-time starter, the number 7 Mage, shown on the early lead. He showed plenty of early speed in his career debut sprinting, so you would imagine the plan will be to go forward with him in this 2-turn debut. Some other horses who do have the ability to be forwardly placed are the number 2 Legacy Isle and the number 5 Il Miracolo. Those are both long shots in the field. I would note the positioning, though, of the number 4 Forte, that favorite, who was actually shown closer to the pace than some people might anticipate. He did come from off the pace when he won races like the Breeders' Futurity and Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year, but he has shown some better tactical speed in the past, so I'm sure his connections, Todd Pletcher and jockey Brad Ortiz, would not be upset if he were up in a stalking position in the early portions of this Fountain of Youth. Let's also take a look at the TimeformUS Finish Projector, one of the new features in TimeformUS that you can access in your DRF mobile PPs. This is the finish of the race predicted by the TimeformUS algorithm, and a little bit closer than some people might have anticipated, as Forte is just barely shown edging out that second-time starter Mage at the finish of this race, though he is predicted to be the winner. Mage did earn a nice TimeformUS speed figure in his lone start, so I think that's why he's shown so close to Forte on the finish projector, but clearly Forte is coming in with a big class advantage, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a bit as we dive into the main contenders. And let's begin by taking a look at Forte's last race, and that of course came in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile at Keeneland. This is the race in which he earned the 2-year-old championship honors. Also in this race is Blazing Sevens, who does close for 4th here, but he was no match for Forte on this day, and Forte really proved a lot here as he ran down the heavy favorite coming into this race, Cave Rock. That rival did a lot of work on the front end, and Forte, given his versatility, was able to sit off that pace, make that big run coming around the far turn, and when going away in the short stretch run at Keeneland. And I note the short stretch because it's a similar situation going the mile and the 16th at Gulfstream on Saturday. Gulfstream and Keeneland are similarly configured, where that mile and the 16th distance has just about an 1/8 of a mile stretch run. Forte already showed that he handled it both last time in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and the Breeders' Futurity, two of the best efforts of his career. And he was already running speed figures as a 2-year-old that make him faster than any of his rivals in this race who have more recency than he does. So with any kind of step forward, Forte is going to be tough to beat in this race. And if you've watched some of his recent workouts at Palm Beach Downs, you might expect a move forward, because this horse has been training very forwardly for his 3-year-old debut in company with an older horse in his last couple of workouts, and he has been easily besting that rival. So Forte is expected to deliver a strong performance on Saturday as the favorite in this Fountain of Youth. The other horse coming out of that Breeders' Cup Juvenile is the number 6 Blazing Sevens. And like I said, he was no match for Forte the 2 times that they met last year, both in the Hopeful and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. His claim to fame was in that Champagne Stakes run at Aqueduct last year, where he won by over 3 lengths in a sloppy track, beat Verifying, who has since done some good things as a 3-year-old. So I think the form lines from that Champagne have been okay, but he's got to turn the tables on Forte and take a step forward just in the general sense from his 2-year-old to 3-year-old season. It's certainly possible. He's got the right trainer in his corner in Chad Brown, and we've seen the progeny of Good Magic having some success both going 2 turns and as they gain some maturity maturity. So there definitely is the potential for Blazing Sevens to take a step forward, but you have to decide what kind of price will be high enough if you do want to take him to potentially upset the favorite Forte. Let's take a look at some of the runners coming out of that local prep for the Fountain of Youth, the Holy Bull, and we'll check out the stretch run of that race where Rocket Can beat his stablemate, Shadow Dragon. Both of these horses coming out of the Bill Mott barn. Rocket Can was the more fancied runner coming into this race, going off as the 5-2 second choice, and he gets the job done here, holding his long shot stablemate at bay through the stretch of this race. The problem with Rocket Can is he just has not run a particularly fast speed figure yet. His best number of 104 was earned two back as a 2-year-old when he was second in an allowance race at Churchill Downs. Now, that is a race that has been pretty productive moving forward, as the winner confidence game just came back to upset the Grade 2 Rebel last week, and fourth place finisher Hit Show has since come back and won the Wither Stake. So that's been a pretty strong allowance race at Churchill Downs, and Rocket Can did come back to win the Holy Bull in his next start. But unlike those other two, he did not take that big step forward from a speed figure standpoint. So he still has to prove that he is fast enough to take on the likes of Forte and Blazing Sevens and potentially some others in this Fountain of Youth. As for his stablemate Shadow Dragon, he did take a big step forward last time, but he did so in a race that just didn't come up that fast, and he had a lot to prove coming in there, having only won a maiden race prior to that against New York breds. This is a horse that does possess a big late kick, and he was able to translate it to 2 turns last time when he did close for second, but he's facing a much tougher field on this occasion. There is some speed signed on in this race, but not so much speed that the race is expected to completely fall apart, and I do think Shadow Dragon is the kind of horse that would need a lot of help up front if he's going to upset a field of this quality. Let's move on to the beaten favorite in that Holy Bull, and that's Cyclone Mischief. And we'll actually take a look at his race 2 back that caused him to be the favorite, bet down to 6-5 in the Holy Bull in his next start. And here he is winning this allowance race back in early January. He looked pretty good this day, slicing through between horses coming off the far turn to draw off and win this race by over 5 lengths in the end. The horse who was second in here, Litigate, did come back to win the Sam F. Davis Stakes in his next start at Tampa Bay Downs. Problem is, this Litigate did, although he came back to win, didn't do so with a particularly fast speed figure next time, so he didn't really flatter this race in that sense. And furthermore, Cyclone Mischief achieved that allowance victory while he was racing on Lasix. He came off Lasix next time in the Holy Bull and just looked flat, ran poorly. I will say he didn't get the best trip that day. For whatever reason, they decided to rate him in that spot, and even though he broke sharply, Tyler Gaffaleone reined him in to take kickback in behind horses. It just seemed like Cyclone Mischief resented that kind of trip. He basically spit out the bit about halfway through the race and did no running in the final 3/8 of a mile. I think this horse has more talent than we saw last time. He's going to have to really step up if he's going to beat the likes of Forte and Blazing Sevens, but I wouldn't totally dismiss this horse because he's going to be a much bigger price than he was last time, and there is some talent in there somewhere. Let's also take a look at another horse coming out of a stakes event at Gulfstream Park. That is the number 1 General Jim. And I should mention our DRF colleague, Marty McGee, did report just earlier this week that General Jim had a slight setback. His training has been interrupted. So Shig McGahee is toying with potentially scratching him from this Fountain of Youth. Some might say it's likely that he scratches from this race. So keep that in mind if you're a big fan of General Jim coming into this race. This is him winning the Swale last time out at Gulfstream. This was just going the 1-turn 7 furlong distance. He does have some things to prove going further than this. He won going 2 turns, but it was on the turf when he was a 2-year-old. On the dirt, he's never gone the 2 turns before. He did try a mile 2 back. That was in the Mucho Macho Man, where he did not get the best of trips, but still, he's got to take a big step forward, kind of like the horses coming out of the Holy Bull. And that slight interruption in his training, definitely not a positive sign coming into this big class test on Saturday, if he does indeed run. One more horse to take a look at is the number 7 Mage, and this is the most lightly raced member of this field. This is his only start when he debuted on the Pegasus World Cup undercard at the end of January, and certainly did everything right. For an 11-1 shot, he was a bit of a secret coming into this race, but no secret coming out, as he was an impressive winner by over 3 lengths, ran a fast time for the 7 furlong distance, and got a pretty healthy speed figure. 89 Beyer, 113 TimeformUS speed figure, knocked down a little bit from a 116 final time number. So that's why he was shown so high up in the finish projector, because he ran a speed figure that suggests he might be in the same league as Forte. The problem is That's a number that I just want to take with a grain of salt and see validated. Even though he ran on Pegasus World Cup Day, where I think there were 13 or 14 races in total, there were only 3 other dirt races on that card, and they all took place in the second half of the day, whereas he ran in race 2. So can you really compare the time that he ran to those races that were run hours later on the dirt? Did the track change? It's hard to really know because most of the horses that were running against him had not run speed figures that were quite up to that level yet, and some others were very lightly raced or other first-time starters. So I find that 113 TimeformUS speed figure a tough number to have a lot of confidence in, and he certainly has a lot working against him, giving away experience and the two-turn experience in class to a lot of others in this race. But he is bred to go longer, being by good magic out of a damn Puka that was proficient going route distances. So some things to like about Mage, but he's the kind of horse that I would want to get a price on if I were backing in this Fountain of Youth. So let's throw my picks for this Derby prep on Saturday at Gulfstream Park, and I'm going to put the number 4 Forte on top. If I were making a value line for this race, I would probably say fair odds on Forte are around 4 to 5. He's listed at 7 to 5 on the morning line. I fully expect him to be the odds-on favorite in this race. So I think he's by far the most likely winner. And given that I think his fair odds are in the odds-on territory, I'm not looking to play against him here. There's nobody else that really appeals to me from a value standpoint, but Forte will be my top pick. Again, not looking to strongly endorse him from a wagering standpoint. I just think he's probably not going to lose on Saturday and might be solidified as the Kentucky Derby favorite 2 months out from the first Saturday in May. So that's a look at the Fountain of Youth on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.